Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey, and this is a new series called The Zen of Zero Fucks Given. And I'm going to show you, as best I can, how to stop giving a shit, because as I've said many times, not giving a shit is the secret to happiness. There'll be several parts, and in between those parts will be follow-up videos based on comments I received from the previous video. And the idea behind that is we're kind of on this journey together, so that as the series progresses, I'm answering questions, clearing up confusion, that sort of thing. So that by the end of the series, everybody's cool, everyone understands, we're all on the same page, and the subject can be closed. So let's begin with the quintessential question, the meaning of life. Now, why am I starting here? Why am I starting talking about the meaning of life? Well, the reason is it's extremely foundational. Depending on where you fall about what is the meaning of life, it's going to lead you down vastly different roads in regards to whether you give a shit and how you structure your life going forward. So in order to put you on the path to not giving a shit, we need to start at the beginning, which is this foundational question, what is the meaning of life? And I'm actually going to answer this question. This isn't clickbait, I'm not tricking you into clicking on this video or watching this video, I'm actually going to answer this question. I'm just going to add one word to this question. Now, it's not going to change the answer, but it's going to help you understand the answer. I'm going to add the word intrinsic, as in, what is the intrinsic meaning of life? And then after I answer that question, I'm going to explain my answer, and you're going to understand it much better with that added word. Because the truth is, life has no intrinsic meaning. Almost nothing has an intrinsic meaning. You can use several analogies to demonstrate this. Let's think of an art canvas. An art canvas is just a bunch of fibers woven together into a mat, nailed or stapled across a wooden frame to paint on. What is the meaning of an art canvas? It has no intrinsic meaning. It's a medium. It's a means. The art has to be put onto the canvas to have meaning. The canvas itself has no meaning. Life has no meaning. It has no intrinsic meaning. But just like a painting can have meaning by the artist who painted it, a song can have meaning by the artist who wrote it. Your life can have meaning based on what you do with it, based on how you use it, based on the meaning you give it. This is where I part ways with nihilists, because I consider myself an existentialist but not a nihilist. The difference being, nihilism is very defeatist. It's very kind of like shrug your shoulders, nothing matters, nothing has any meaning, nothing has any value, fuck it, I'm just going to wear black and shop at Hot Topic and wear mascara. Whereas the way I look at it is, while life has no intrinsic meaning, you can give it meaning, just like an artist can take a canvas, which has no intrinsic meaning, and give it meaning. When you look at a painting, you can see the meaning that the artist intended for that painting. I mean, maybe not with modern art, but with a lot of classical art, you can feel the meaning that the artist intended. When you listen to music, you can feel the meaning that the singer and the musicians intended for that song. So rather than being a declaration of defeat and passiveness, understanding the intrinsic meaninglessness of life is incredibly empowering. Because it means that you are in control. You can give your life the meaning that you choose. Now obviously there's this endless variety of choices you could make. And it's kind of like if you got thrown into a game or some sort of situation where you could do anything. The hardest part would be getting started. What do? You have all these tools to do anything, but what do? Some people just want that simple direction, and this is where people get manipulated. Because if you don't give your life meaning, other people will attempt to hijack your life to give their own life meaning. So put another way, you have some sort of group or tribe or whatever tries to take the meaning that your life could have and subserviate it to their own agenda. And I talked about this in my videos about tribal identity. Tribalism is pretty much part of human nature. You're always going to be tribalistic to some degree or another. But when you define yourself through a tribe, when you identify solely with that tribe, and that tribe becomes an extension of yourself, then you lose your identity. You can no longer chart your own course. You can no longer create meaning for your own life. Your meaning as an individual is tied in with that group. And that's bad, because that restricts you. If that group isn't serving your interest, what do? Do you detach yourself from the group, your identity? It's going to be very painful. Very few people are going to do that, even when the group isn't benefiting them. So the important thing is to understand the meaning of life for yourself, the intrinsic meaninglessness of life, and the fact that the ball's in your court to give your life meaning. And to not let your life be taken over by some group who wants you to be a part of it and is offering to give your life meaning, some sort of easy template. Just follow this template and your life will have meaning according to this, whether it's religion or society or some secular dogma. There are no end to groups who want to give your life meaning that serves their interests. Now, it's okay to cooperate as long as there's some sort of mutual benefit. But when there's no mutual benefit, when they're just asking for sacrifice, when they're asking you to subserviate your wishes and your dreams and your goals to them, and they're offering nothing in exchange other than a sense of identity and belonging to a group, then you need to give them 2 middle fingers and tell them to go fuck themselves. But because we are social creatures, because we long to be part of a group, it's very easy to subserviate our meaning, our personal meaning, to that of a group. To feel like belonging to a group gives us meaning. Because the opposite of that is loneliness. It's isolation. But you will never achieve the peace of mind that comes with not giving a shit as long as you subserviate your meaning to others. You have to be the master of your own life. Now, that doesn't mean you're self-employed or independently wealthy. You can have a job. You can go to work, you can cooperate, you can have relationships with people, with groups, with societies, with whatever, as long as you are calling the shots regarding your identity and your meaning. This is when people lose themselves. When they hand over power over their identity and their meaning to others. You can't do that. You must hold on to your own meaning and identity. Now that means you may not be accepted in some groups that demand conformity. So fucking what? You may not be popular, so fucking what? But what separates a MGTOW from a traditionalist? The traditionalist has subserviated their identity and their meaning to others, their family, their society, their political party, whatever. They no longer care about themselves. They derive their meaning, their purpose, their identity through their wife, their kids, their political party, their country. They subserviate their meaning to others. That is what a traditionalist is in a nutshell. They've given up any hope of some sort of mutually beneficial exchange. They just want their life to be meaningful in the eyes of their family or country or whatever. It's really pathetic. And MGTOW reject that. Their right to do so. But then the question becomes, well, now what? Once you cast aside all this tribalistic identity, once you take control of your own meaning and you want to define that for yourself, then what do? What's the next step? How do you define that meaning? How do you search out and discover that meaning? Now, in an earlier video called Into the Wasteland, I talked about this, but I want to kind of rephrase and revisit some of those concepts. So in that video, I talked about doing what makes you happy. I want to change my verbiage a little bit, because happiness can be deceptive. A lot of people chase happiness as in the emotion of happiness, and they get into a lot of trouble. The reason why is emotions are fleeting, and you can be desensitized to the things that cause those emotions. For example, if you ever go on a vacation to, let's say, Disney World, you get plane tickets and a hotel room for a week and you're going to hit all the Disneyland parks in Florida. After about 3 or 4 days, you've hit all the parks. You've went on all the rides you wanted to go on. But you're still there for another couple days. So you go back to the parks, go on some of the rides again. By the 5th or 6th day, you're just done. You want to go home. You're bored. Because you've gone on all the rides. What was once so thrilling and exciting has now become mundane, boring, and irritating. And then you have the extreme examples of celebrities that die of drug overdoses, chasing the next high. They do something, it just gives them that rush, and they keep chasing that rush. They chase that feeling, that emotion of happiness, and they keep upping the ante until they die of a drug overdose. Don't do what makes you happy, as in don't just chase the emotion of happiness. Do what gives your life meaning. as you define it. Think about it. Sit down and think what you want the meaning of your life to be. It doesn't have to be a permanent answer. You could change your mind later. But it's meaning that creates true happiness. You're not going to find meaning in drugs or an amusement park, but you can find meaning in other things. And it is in those meaningful things that you will find true happiness. So that concludes part 1 of the Zen of Zero Fucks Given. Please post your questions in the comments section because I will review them, and I may do a follow-up video where I address some questions before moving on to the next subject. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Welcome to part 2 of the Zen of Zero Fucks Given. This is going to be a follow-up video of part 1, The Meaning of Life. Now a lot of the comments and questions I'm going to be covering in future videos, so I'm not going to be answering those now. But there were 2 kinds of comments that I saw a lot of. One of them was asking about the difference between meaning and purpose. And I'm going to specifically address a comment saying, quote, "How would a person who has attached their life's meaning to something else reframe their mind? An actionable process would be great for the next video." So firstly, let's talk about the difference between meaning and purpose. They are related, but they're not synonymous. So originally I was going to reuse my art example, but I actually think I have a better example to use. So let's say you're overweight, and you want to get healthy. You want to lose weight, you want to increase your physical strength. So that's the goal. So we start with a goal. I want to lose weight. I want to increase my physical strength. So we have our goal. Now we peel back a layer and we ask why. Why do we want to lose weight and increase our physical strength? And here's where things can fork. Because people can have different motives. So underneath the goal is the motive. It can be internally focused. It could be externally focused. And for this particular example, one person may want to lose weight and increase their physical strength because they're tired of being made fun of. They are tired of being called the fat kid. They want girls to find them attractive. They want people to like them. They want to be conventionally attractive. This would be an example of an external motivation. Now, an internal motivation might be to not feel pain when you're walking around, to just feel better about yourself, to feel healthier, to see your own dick while you pee. Lots of little things about being morbidly obese make life very hard. Now, if you scratch the surface of the motive, you get to the meaning. So you start with the goal. Underneath the goal, you have the motive. Underneath the motive, you have the meaning. It's the why underneath the why. So the goal is something you want to do. The motive is why you want to do it. And the meaning is the why behind the why. So, for example, our externally motivated person, their meaning is motivated by loneliness, the desire to form relationships. So their meaning is relationships. If you want to summarize it into one word, they want to enhance their relationships with others. Now, in our internally motivated example, the person who wants to actually get healthy so they can live a better life and have better satisfaction just with their daily activities, their meaning is self-improvement. I can give you all kinds of thought exercises, like if you won the lottery and you didn't have to work another day in your life, you could do anything you wanted, what would you do? Not where would you go on vacation, but actually what would you do for the rest of your life to stay busy? What would you do that you would consider meaningful? Would you write books? Would you travel the world? Those kinds of thought exercises can give you some insight into the meaning behind your motivations, but ultimately it's something you have to think about. Meanings fall in 2 categories. They're either externally motivated or they're internally motivated. And externally motivated meanings ultimately come down to relationships. And internally motivated meanings ultimately come down to self-improvement. Now personally, I think the road to self-improvement is a much harder road. It's a road much less traveled. You can find relationships. This is how women define themselves. They define themselves through their relationships. Think about, what does the average woman accomplish? How does she reach her full potential? She probably doesn't. She just shits out a few kids and calls it a day. She defines her meaning through the relationships with her children, or her baby's daddy, or whatever. That's like the default program for women. But I think men are more driven by default to seek self-improvement, as opposed to defining their meaning through relationships. Now, if you do define meaning through relationships, I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm not saying you're not a man, but that is exactly how you're manipulated. If you're in a family that's pressuring you to get married or something like that, and you don't want to disappoint your family, and you don't want to be ostracized from your family, and you feel yourself being manipulated by your relatives and women and all stuff like that, it's precisely because you define your meaning through relationships. I don't think it's possible to reach the zero fucks given pinnacle as long as you define your meaning through relationships. You have to let go of defining your meaning through relationships, and you have to reorient yourself to find your meaning in self-improvement. Now, you may not believe that self-improvement is an adequate replacement for relationships. If you can't reorient yourself, though, I don't know if you'll ever make it. I don't know if you could actually cut yourself off and truly not give a shit about what people think and say if you define your meaning through relationships with those people. Because then losing those people hurts your meaning. It actually tangibly takes away from the purpose and meaning of your life. Whereas if your meaning is based on self-improvement, who fucking cares? If you're not contributing something worthwhile to my life, if you're just trying to use me and manipulate me, fuck you. I don't care if we're related. I don't care how hot you are. Get the fuck out of here. You're not worth my time. It's worth noting that those who are internally motivated, who actually seek self-improvement rather than externally motivated, trying to please and form relationships with others, tend to do better in the long term. To return to our original example regarding weight loss, those who are trying to get ready for bikini season, or trying to appeal to this girl or whatever, they're losing weight to try to be attractive for a person, not for their own sake, but for someone else. They almost always gain the weight back. Whereas those who seek self-improvement, who want to improve their life for their sake, not for anyone else's, they are far more likely to stay healthy, to lose the weight for life, to form lifelong good habits, and actually get in shape and improve their life. And if you define yourself by relationships, people are going to take advantage of you. That's your weakness. And as I explained in my video about the tyranny of the weak, the only way to become immune to people's manipulation is through indifference. When you just don't give a shit. Their crocodile tears and emotional manipulation just no longer affects you. And you can see what people are doing, you can see the games they're playing, as clear as day. It's like, have you ever been in a relationship and your friends were warning you about the girl you were dating, telling you about all these things, and you just couldn't believe them because you had those rose-colored glasses on, you were in love or whatever. You didn't believe your buddies. And then once the relationship was over and your buddies were right, then when you look back on the relationship, you saw all the warning signs, but you just ignored them. When you define your meaning through relationships as opposed to self-improvement, you're going to have those rose-colored glasses with anybody that you value the relationship with. Because that relationship is what gives you meaning. And if you can reorient your meaning towards self-improvement, self-actualization, then you're going to see what's going on, just like your buddies could see through your girlfriend, but you couldn't. You'll be able to see that as well. You'll be able to see what they could see. And what you'll ultimately find is the vast majority of relationships, they're not worth it. Because if your focus is on yourself, your own self-improvement and self-actualization, you only will value relationships that benefit you. Now, obviously, value is subjective, so what little you may be getting may be very valuable to you. But if you're going through the motions to maintaining relationships simply because you don't want to be alone, then you're setting yourself up to be manipulated. Those people are going to know exactly which buttons to push to get you to give in to their demands and do whatever they want you to do. And if you're living your life for others, you're never going to find time for yourself. But at the end of the day, I don't have a magic formula that will help you reorient your meaning, that will help you look inward rather than outward, that will help you define yourself through self-improvement and self-actualization rather than frivolous relationships. For me, a lot of it had to do with just being hurt a lot. I realized how much relationships were sapping my time and energy. how little I was gaining from them, and they just weren't worth it anymore. Maybe you just have to feel more pain. Maybe you just have to go through more experiences, I don't know. Maybe you have to hit your rock bottom. If you're not finding the meaning in your current life, then make a change. Do it now. What are you waiting for?
No, what are you waiting for? Do it! Just do it!
So this concludes part 2. In part 3, we'll be moving on to the next subject, which is perspective. I hope to see you all there. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Just do it!
Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Welcome to part 3 of the Zen of Zero Fucks Given. Today we're going to be talking about perspective. And what do I mean by perspective? Well, that'll become clear as we talk about it. But this subject has already been broached in the comments by several people. In my last video about the meaning of self-improvement, a couple people in the comment section noted that, what's the point of self-improvement? We're just going to die. That's what I'm going to be talking about now. So death is something we don't feel comfortable talking about, even though we all know it's going to come someday. Maybe if, we get robot bodies or something, maybe it won't come for hundreds or thousands of years. But nothing lasts forever, and eventually we will die. Our consciousness will cease to be, and we will effectively not exist anymore. Now, if you're religious, you may believe in an afterlife, you may believe your consciousness lives on somehow in the next world, or God recreates your body and something, or maybe reincarnation is your thing. For the sake of this discussion, we're just going to assume that there is no afterlife, there is no reincarnation, there is no six-armed elephant that's going to judge you when you die. This is it. Your consciousness begins with the development of your advanced brain, and it disappears when that brain ceases to function. Everyone listening to the sound of my voice is going to die. And at the end of the day, if we're all going to die, and everything we build, everything we create, everything we do and live our lives for, will eventually be destroyed, ruined, and forgotten, then what's the point? What is the point? And at this point, I'm going to introduce you to the philosophy of absurdism. Now, I didn't know what absurdism was, I've never heard of it before, but someone in my comments section said, hey, you might want to look this up, and I did, and holy shit, once again, much like Nietzsche, it just describes what I already believe. So isn't it wonderful I now have a name for it, and how appropriate is it that a philosophy called absurdism applies to someone who calls themselves Turd Flinging Monkey? But let me just read from the Wikipedia entry for absurdism. Quote, in philosophy, the absurd refers to the conflict between 1. The human tendency to seek inherent value and meaning in life, and 2. The human inability to find any. In this context, absurd does not mean logically impossible, but rather humanly impossible. The universe and the human mind do not each separately cause the absurd, but rather the absurd arises by the contradictory nature of the two existing simultaneously. Accordingly, absurdism is the philosophical school of thought, stating that the efforts of humanity to find inherent meaning will ultimately fail, and hence are absurd, because the sheer amount of information, as well as the vast realm of the unknown, will make total certainty impossible. As a philosophy, absurdism furthermore explores the fundamental nature of the absurd, and how individuals, once become conscious of the absurd, should respond to it. The absurdist philosopher Albert Camus stated that individuals should embrace the absurd condition of human existence, while also defiantly continuing to explore and search for meaning. So I'm just going to stop there. You can read the rest of the Wikipedia entry if you want. I'll post a link in the description. But this, in essence, is what I believe. And just like how the realization of the intrinsic meaninglessness of life can lead one either to depressed inaction or empowerment, so too does the realization that we will eventually die. The reason for the title of this video, the reason why this is called perspective, is because when you gain a perspective over your death, over how whatever you build, whatever you dedicate your life to will eventually be forgotten, you can separate things very easily into two categories. Things that matter and things that really don't matter. And 99% of things in life fall into the latter category. Very few things in life truly matter. Now, the thing that taught me this lesson was going to war. I saw some shit. I saw people die. And before I went to Iraq, I had the same neurotic fears as most people my age. I worried about friends, I worried about women, I worried about what I was going to do with my life. I had all these worries, not to the point of crippling anxiety or anything, but I worried. But after going to Iraq and just seeing the loss of life, I just learned that half the shit, not more than half, 99% of the shit that I was worrying about, really didn't matter. What was I worried about? There is a very small window of things that you should care about. And what I mean by window is the things that affect your life in the long term, but no more than 100 years, those are the things you should care about. Now, why 100 years? Well, because in 100 years no one's going to remember you. It doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter what kind of things you do to try to be remembered. Have you ever gone to a hospital or a college and you see these buildings named after people? Usually people who did great things, made great discoveries, or they just donated a lot of money, but mostly they did great things. And they have these buildings named after them. But nobody knows who they are. Nobody cares who they are. If their name wasn't on the building, no one would even say their name. Now, a lot of people have this delusion, and I'm just going to pop the bubble on this, and I'm sorry for ripping the band-aid off quickly, but I care about you too much to let you live in this delusion. Some people think that if they have children, that their children are going to be their legacy. That their children are going to live on and reproduce in generations and generations and generations, and that's going to give their life meaning. It's going to allow them to achieve an effective immortality through their children. Well, I have news for you. Your genes are going to be so diluted after only a couple generations that it won't matter. In fact, your genes are already out there in the general gene pool right now. You share genes with pretty much everyone around you, to some degree or another. I saw an article a while back, I'm not sure how accurate it was, but basically the article said that they did genetic testing on people all over the world, and they found that the furthest we're apart are 22nd cousins. So your genes are already out there in some combination. They're mixed in with other genes, sure, but in a few generations your genes will be mixed in with other genes anyway. So in 100 years, your genes, quote unquote, are going to be indistinguishable whether you have children or whether you don't have children. Because even if you don't have children, the people who are related to you, your cousins, your siblings, people in your extended family will have children. And so your genes will still live on, they'll still be diluted just like they're diluted now. And in 100 years, they'll be diluted even further. And it won't matter. Having children isn't a form of immortality. Your last name, you probably share your last name with a dozen or so other families. No one's going to care. Last names don't mean anything anymore. This isn't Game of Thrones, there aren't any great houses. The truth is, there is no immortality. There's nothing you can build that's going to last forever, not even a family, not even a bloodline. Like, remember when you were in high school? Do you ever see that girl who did whatever she had to be popular? She did all the things she could to be popular in high school. And she was very popular in high school, everybody liked her. But she destroyed her life. She peaked too early, as they say. And after high school ended, she really didn't have anywhere to go. That was the highlight of her life, was high school. Like Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. Just living in that high school moment, because that was the highlight of their life. And that's the complete opposite of what I'm talking about. So you don't want to sacrifice your life for some temporary benefit. You don't want to destroy the rest of your life to be popular in high school, because in 4 years high school's going to be over, and you're not going to have shit to show for it. But at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice your life expecting to have this everlasting impact on the world. The people are just going to remember your name forever and ever, because they won't. At best, your best case scenario is you'll be remembered for the next 100 years. If you're remembered for the next 100 years, then you were pretty awesome. You did some cool shit. But you really shouldn't expect anything beyond that. So you want to think of this window the next 100 years window as the window that you should care about. And what is going to affect that window? Whenever you have an issue that's causing you anxiety, and you need to ask yourself, should I care about this? Is this something that matters, or is this something that doesn't matter? Is this going to affect your life for the next 100 years? Is this going to affect the world for the next 100 years? If the answer is no, this is something trivial and stupid, then categorize it appropriately. It's something trivial and stupid. Just get rid of it. Solve it in the most efficient manner possible and get it off your plate. And this may mean swallowing your pride sometimes. Sometimes the most efficient way to solve a problem that's not important is just to swallow your pride, do what I call the song and dance, and just get it off your plate. Some people have a really hard time doing that, because they think like their pride matters. Your pride doesn't mean shit. Your pride isn't going to matter. There's so many things in life that just don't matter. Just trivial, stupid bullshit. So categorize the things in your life that truly matter, put those in one bucket, and then throw the rest in the other bucket. And the bucket that matters is going to be very small. In fact, I can only think of about 3 things that really go in that bucket. That's your health, your freedom, and your shit. And what I mean by your shit, I mean the stuff you own. Not just your property, but your mind, your knowledge, your skills, all those things are your shit. Some of those things can be taken away, some of those things can't be taken away. But even if they can't be taken away, like your knowledge or your skills, they'll eventually deteriorate as your mind and body deteriorate. So nothing lasts forever. But it matters because it's going to affect your life in the long term. If you have your health, your freedom, your shit, you're good to go. Now, you don't want to necessarily prioritize your health over other things that are going to affect your life as well, such as things that could negatively affect your freedom, for example. Most people don't care about their health because they're lazy, and they're prioritizing things that really don't matter at all. But if you have the right perspective about what's important and what isn't important, you're going to prioritize things like your health, your freedom, your shit, above things that really don't matter, which is pretty much everything else. Now, some people think that that's selfish. It's a selfish attitude, and selfishness doesn't build civilization. Well, I disagree. And the example I could think of is the MGTOW community. Now, this community is built on selfishness. That's what MGTOW is. It's a man taking ownership of his life, not being a wage slave to a woman or a sacrifice to society. And yet, within this community, we help and grow, even though we're selfish. So think about that. But the important thing to understand is we only have a limited, finite amount of time on this earth. We have the same 24 hours each day, and we don't know how many years until it's over. So make the most of your time by keeping a perspective about what's important and what isn't. Filter out the things that aren't important. When you accept that everything you build, everything you try to do will eventually be destroyed and forgotten. When you embrace the absurdity of life. When you prioritize the things that are truly important, the things that will actually positively affect your life for the next 100 years, you're going to stop giving a shit about the things that aren't important. It's going to radically change your life for the better. You're going to be more focused and driven for the things that truly matter, and you're going to be able to let go of the things that don't matter. So this concludes part 3. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section. I'll answer them in the follow-up video. Thank you for watching. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Welcome to part 4 of the Zen of Zero Fucks Given. This is going to be a follow-up to part 3, Perspective. And I'm going to be responding to 3 specific comments that I thought were noteworthy enough to base a video on. So the first one reads, quote, "You failed to address some very important questions concerning how a man is able to give true expression of his will. In modern society, no one is free from the coercive effects of culture, media, and propaganda. A person cannot help but define his beliefs and aspirations with reference to his immediate environment. As a MGTOW, you should be aware that this can have deleterious consequences for the individual. In an overtly gynocentric or traditional society, a man can be forgiven for thinking that his purpose lies in having a family, and that this is an expression of his true will. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. The question is, how does a man escape the ever-pervasive influence of his society, and how would he know if he had, unquote. So to answer your question, a man can think. And once you see it, it's like the Matrix. You can't unsee it. Once you see like the green code, you see it everywhere. Now I think the question behind your question is, where does instinct stop and social construct begin? And I think in this, maybe I'm wrong, the way I approach it is I look at animals. If animals do it, and because animals don't have the advanced brains as humans, they don't have any concept of government or media or propaganda or feminism, they're just living on instincts. If animals do it, it's safe to assume that it's an instinct. If no animal does it, if it's specifically something only humans do, and it's not universal, like humans all over the world don't do it, only humans in specific cultures and regions and ethnicities do it, then it's pretty safe to say that it's a social construct specific to that culture or ethnicity or whatever. Now the desire to have a family is an instinct. Animals do it. It's why animals don't go extinct. So I don't think the desire to have a family is some kind of social construct. I think the desire to marry is a social construct because marriage doesn't exist in nature. In fact, marriage differs from culture and region and ethnicity, so it can't be an instinct. It can only be a social construct. In fact, the nature of marriage has changed over time as culture has changed. Nobody in their right mind would argue that marriage is an instinct, but the desire to have a family is an instinct. I mean, not for everyone. Not everyone likes kids. But instincts operate off of pleasure and pain. Things that promote survival and reproduction cause pleasure. Things that don't cause pain. This is why some people, when they see a baby, they're like, oh, what a cute little baby. That's their instinct saying, oh, babies are cute. Why don't you have a baby? Follow your instincts. It all works on pleasure and pain. But marriage is just a hoop that society has created for men to jump through, promise to take care of a woman for the rest of her life in order to facilitate that desire. And it's total bullshit, and it's gotten more and more bullshit by the day. But to return to your original question, it's fairly easy to shake off the social constructs of your culture, to realize that your culture is setting you up for failure and sacrifice. I've done several videos on the matrix of tribal identity that talk specifically about this, and I've also done several TFM news videos about how traditionalists make these articles about trying to promote men to sacrifice themselves for society. That a man has no worth unless he's living for others, unless he's sacrificing himself for others, and that's total bullshit. As long as a woman shits out a few kids, she lived a full life. But a man, oh, he has to sacrifice himself, oh, he has to give back. Fuck you. You can't really get rid of your instincts. You can't get rid of your instincts any more than women can become Nawalts by purging themselves of hypergamy. It's just not going to happen. The best you can do is be aware of your instincts and not give in to them. Just like if you're dieting and you're trying to lose weight, you're going to have cravings for junk food. You can't just like snap your fingers and do away with these cravings. All you can do is resist them. So, that's the best I got. Now on a somewhat related note, the next comment reads, quote, "There is a thing that is more valuable than health, freedom, possessions, or any knowledge or skill that you have. Honor. Without it, all the rest is smoke. If you are not well regarded by your peers, if you are not a member in good standing in your profession, if in your social circle your name is mud, all the wealth, all the knowledge in the world are not going to make you happy. Humans are social animals. We need the approval of others to be truly content. You may say that it does not matter to you. I agree 100%. To you, it may not matter. Now go ask the rest of what is in your head. You may not need social approval, but the rest of your brain craves it. Always remember that you are a very small part of what makes the individual human we all know and react to. Always remember you are a number of routines running in a brain. There are others which you are not consciously aware, and they have more to do with how you behave, who you react to, and how you believe. Believe it or not, the truth is you are not master of your brain and body. The ego, what you call self, is a newcomer, and the rest are not sure it's a welcome addition. They may decide it's worth its feed, or they may decide to scrap it. Just so long as we are clear, don't go thinking we are masters of all we survey. We all have routines running in our brains that dictate what we think and how in any given situation. Alright, so this guy, I don't even know where to start. So yes, to repeat myself, we have instincts. That's what you're talking about. We have instincts running within our lizard brain, which compel us through pleasure and pain to engage in certain activities which are hardwired into our instincts. So what? We have higher brain functions that we could resist them. Now, of course, these instincts, if you don't follow them, they will induce a pain response. So if you're not fulfilling your biological function, you're going to get chemicals in your brain that are going to make you feel sad and lonely and so forth. So what you do, and again, I'm going to just use the same analogy, like when you're trying to diet and lose weight, you're going to get these cravings. It's your body trying to get you to do something that you don't want to do. So what do you do when you have these cravings? You can't just sit there and think about it. You have to do something else to get your mind off of it. If you're a fatso on a diet, and you're just trying really hard not to think about chocolate cake, all you're going to think about is chocolate cake. And then before you know it, you're going to be baking a cake, and then you're going to be eating the entire cake. And then you're going to be wondering, oh, how did this happen? Now, instead of when those thoughts of chocolate cake came into your mind, if you ate a salad, or if you went for a walk, if you did something to get your mind off of it, you'd be fine. But I also want to say, fuck honor. Fuck honor right in its ass. Here's the problem with honor. Honor is defined by the culture. The culture decides what is honorable. I mean, just use one example from Japan. The samurai were the great honorable warriors of Japan. Now, if you fail the mission, doesn't matter what the odds were, like you could have been outnumbered 10 to 1. You're just supposed to charge in and die. Now, if you just do the common sense thing and leave because you can't beat 10 guys at the same time, then you're supposed to disembowel yourself to maintain your honor. Now think of all the training that went into a samurai, all the years of training, education, the heritage. And because of one retarded mission that they failed, they have to disembowel themselves or just throw themselves into battle until they're dead. That's honor. Nobody remembers these samurai who disemboweled themselves. Their names are forgotten. Their deeds are forgotten. Well, but they had their honor. Fuck honor. Now, he also talks about that we're social creatures, and I agree. And there's nothing prohibiting me from cooperating. There'll just be something in it for me. I'm not just going to cooperate because I'm lonely, because I want someone around me, so I'm going to sacrifice and cooperate with them with nothing in return just to feel like I belong. That's slave morality. If you want my cooperation, then you need to make it worth my while. I will cooperate. I'm all about cooperation. I mean, you look at the MGTOW community. We obviously cooperate. There is infighting, obviously, but by and large we cooperate because we have shared goals and because we benefit one another. You make a video, you share your knowledge, people benefit from it, and the community grows. I don't give a shit whether my peers regard me as great or whether my name is mud. I really, really don't care. The only thing that I care in that situation is how is this going to negatively affect my life. For example, I was falsely accused of rape in high school. That destroyed my social life. It wasn't the fact that I had a reputation as a falsely accused rapist that kept me up at night and caused me anxiety. It was the consequences of that caused me anxiety. Because friends abandoned me. I mean, God forbid I tried to ask a girl out. So it was the consequences of this bad reputation that pissed me off. Not the actual label, not being regarded or my name being mud. It was the consequences, because it negatively affected my life. That's what I cared about. I mean, that's why I'm worried about being doxxed. I don't care what people think, but I do care about the consequences of having those labels, getting fired, being homeless, that kind of stuff. And that has nothing to do with honor. And the rest of your comment about the ego and all these different parts of your body, your instincts and your lower brain functions are not consciousness. Animals operate on instinct. They're fucking animals. They don't think. You as a human being can think. Your brain is more advanced. Your lower brain functions aren't going to be like, well, we don't like you, higher brain function, because your ego, we're going to get rid of you. This isn't inside out. It's not like your emotions and thoughts have personifications inside your head, and they have wacky misadventures. You control your body. You're the one typing on your keyboard. You're the one clicking on my videos. Now, the last comment I'm going to respond to reads, ever since I can remember, I've been the same. I have a goal, I have a passion. My passion is art. Every kind of visual art, 3D, digital painting, concept, all that shit. and it's actually enough to fill my time. It's so much material that I can literally spend all day drawing and studying composition, color, anatomy, whatnot. When I was little, I used to want to be liked by the cool kids, but after a few rejections, I got pissed off and blew them off. But a few years later, whenever they would invite me to parties and things like that, I never went. But the reason is not that I didn't want to go. I would love to hang out with some of them, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking that getting drunk and having tons of sex is something worth pursuing. It's a weird position. I hope you can understand it. But I was driven. I have something higher in my life, my art. I think I have gotten on the road for self-worth position at that point. But the problem is I started recently to feel that this is an unhealthy way of viewing everything. And I have a bad feeling that in the end, when I'm old and gray and a brilliant artist, I will still feel empty and regretful for not having the kinds of relationships others do. I started feeling like I'm missing out again, but at the same time I don't want to be manipulated. Never have been, never want to be. Don't you ever feel the same way? I'm sure you have your buddies, but mine are going to start getting married soon. I can tell because all their number one goals are women. And we're kind of separating ways. Your buddies won't be there for you all the time, and loving a woman is not the same as a group of dudes. How do you handle these thoughts? Peace. So let me just break this comment down a little bit at a time. So you start out talking about you have your passion, your art, and you don't care about being liked. You don't really even care about going to parties and just having meaningless sex. And that's great. That means you are on the way. In fact, I think you might actually be closer to the pinnacle than you may think. Now towards the end, you talk about how you're second guessing yourself. You're wondering if the way you're living your life is unhealthy. There was this girl I used to know, and we dated for a little bit. That's not really important to the story. Other girls would constantly tell her that she's too skinny. They're like, oh, you're too skinny, you need to, eat more or something like that. And it was just her biology. She just had a really fast metabolism. She was athletic and stuff like that. But she was like a healthy skinny. She wasn't like anorexic. But of course, the girls who struggled with their weight would constantly give her a hard time, telling her she needed to gain some weight and put some meat on her bones and all that stuff. But behind closed doors, they were all jealous of her because she could easily maintain her figure, whereas they had to constantly struggle with diet and exercise because their metabolism wasn't as good. When you're on the road to self-actualization and meaning and purpose, people are going to come into your life and try to pull you down because they're miserable. They're not finding the satisfaction you're finding. And they're going to tell you things like, oh, when you're old and gray, you're going to regret not giving half your shit to a woman. What are you going to do with all this shit? You better give half of it to a woman if you want to be happy. It doesn't make any sense. And I've done videos about dying alone. I've done these videos before. I've talked about these issues. If you're content with your life, don't let anyone tell you shouldn't be happy. Listen to people's advice. They might have something good to say. And when it comes to your friends abandoning you as they have families, that's just going to happen. It's just going to happen. It's actually one of the big benefits of the YouTube MGTOW community. Very hard to find like-minded individuals, whereas the internet, it allows us to find each other. It may not be the same thing. It'd be great if we all lived really close together. We could just walk to each other's houses and hang out. That'd be awesome. But in the meantime, this is better than nothing. Anyway, that concludes the follow-up video. For perspective, the next subject we'll be talking about is attachment. Hope to see you there. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey, and welcome to part 5 of the Zen of Zero Fucks Given. The subject of today's video is attachment, or rather, how to overcome attachment. Now, I don't usually talk about religion on this channel, because most of it's bullshit. However, occasionally, just like a broken clock is right twice a day, you can find some wisdom in religion. And in this case, I'm going to turn to Buddhism. Now, I'm not a Buddhist or anything, but I'm going to read some famous quotes from Buddhism, and this is going to apply to what I'm talking about in this video. Quote, "The root of suffering is attachment." Quote, "Most of our troubles are due to our passionate desire for, and attachment to, things that we misapprehend as enduring entities. You only lose what you cling to." Unquote. Now with those quotes out of the way, I want to talk about why in order to reach the point of not giving a shit about things, you have to not get attached to things. And this doesn't just apply to physical things like being attached to your money or your job, it especially applies to relationships. Most people understand that things like jobs and physical possessions are temporary, Cars break down. No matter how much you love that car, it's going to break down unless you put a lot of money into keeping it restored. Your job, most people change jobs every 3 to 5 years. So even if you really love your job, chances are it's not going to be there in a few years. Maybe you'll move up, maybe you'll move back, I don't know. But people change jobs all the time because companies get shut down, companies get bought out, companies outsource, things happen. No matter how much you love your job, change will happen. If you get too attached to your daily routine, you're not going to be able to embrace and anticipate change. You're going to fear it, you're going to drag your feet, and it's going to leave you behind. But going back to some of our earlier videos when we talked about defining your meaning through relationships, the reason why people often define their meaning through relationships is they get too attached to those relationships. When you're too attached to anybody, not just a single person, but any group, any organization, this applies to tribalism, nationalism, anything that you define yourself through, anything you get too attached to, you become blind. And then you care more about maintaining that relationship than doing what's in your best interest. And we'll come back to that later, but I hope you understand that in order to not give a shit about what people think, what people say, and the world around you at large, you can't get attached to relationships or things. However, that doesn't mean you can't appreciate them in the moment. Think of it like when you pick a flower. You pick a flower so you can enjoy the fragrance and the beauty of it and all that stuff. You're enjoying the flower in the moment. In a couple days, that flower is going to wilt and die. Now, some people say, well, don't pick the flower, water it, dig it out by the root and put it in a pot and bring it home. Even if you do that, the flower is still going to die. You can't stop the flower from dying. If your goal is to preserve that moment for as long as possible, you're going to be disappointed because the end will eventually come. That flower will die, that relationship will sour, change will happen. But if you're not worried about that, if you don't get too attached to that thing, that relationship, that whatever, as long as you maintain detachment from it, you can appreciate it in the moment for what it is. Yes, this flower is going to die, but I can appreciate it for now. And when it inevitably does die, I'm okay with that. I've mentally prepared myself to let go of this flower once it dies. And we have to do the same thing with pretty much everything in life if we want to maintain a good centered sense of zero fucks given. Now, I also think this is especially important to MGTOW in overcoming the so-called red pill rage. Now, in a previous video where I talked about the red pill rage, I mentioned that the reason why this happens is because men are stripped of their meaning. So many men are brought up to believe that their meaning is becoming a husband and a father and living the American dream, or whatever country you're from, the Zimbabwean dream. However, when they swallow the red pill, when they understand how gynocentric the system is, how set up against them it is, and they have to let go of those dreams, it's very traumatic because they become so attached. But if they were never attached to that prescribed meaning, if they simply lived for themselves, it wouldn't have bothered them as much. It may have still been uncomfortable. I mean, these aren't pleasant realizations, but you wouldn't have been so angry. You would have gotten through the red pill rage much quicker if you simply accepted it and you weren't attached to that definition of manhood and masculinity to begin with. And in another video called MGTOW Love Women, I talked about how if you understand something, you can appreciate and love it for what it is. And this applies to relationships even with women. So some of this advice is more for the younger guys who just value sex that much that you really can't talk them out of it. So my advice to you is to think of women like roller coasters. You get in line, you wait, you do your time, you finally get to go on the roller coaster, you enjoy it for a couple minutes, and then when the ride is over, you need to leave because there's people behind you waiting to get on the roller coaster too. When the ride is over, you don't just refuse to get out of the seat and say, no, I want to go on the roller coaster again. I want to go on the roller coaster all day, because you'll be removed. You have to accept that the ride is over and it's time to move on. But that doesn't mean that while you're riding the roller coaster, you just have all this anxiety and all this sadness and anger because you know the ride is going to end soon. Because then you rob yourself of the entire point of going on the roller coaster. The entire point is to enjoy yourself and have fun. Not to think about, oh, this roller coaster is going to be over in 2 minutes. I better get really sad and angry and refuse to get out. Just appreciate the ride while it lasts and then leave. And the difference between these two mindsets is attachment. If you're attached to whatever the roller coaster represents, a job, a relationship, a physical possession, whatever that is, you're holding on to tightly. And it's causing you anxiety, it's causing you anger, frustration, sadness. It's causing all these negative emotions because you're attached to it. Just let it go. Appreciate it for what it is while it lasts. And when it inevitably goes away, you'll be okay. You'll live, you'll survive, you'll move forward, you'll find happiness in something else. And speaking directly to the MGTOW community, I want to give some practical advice regarding women and relationships in the context of this discussion. The problem with modern society is equality. We expect women to be men's equal. We treat them like they're our partners, and they can never be our partners. They never were our partners. Stop trying to make them something they're not. Stop trying to fit that square peg into that round hole. That's the problem. But if you put that aside, women aren't useless. They have uses. You can appreciate them for what they are. This is why I liken them to children or dogs. Now, some people would take a comparison of a woman to a dog or a child as highly offensive, but I don't give a shit. My point in that comparison is this. Women and dogs are not inherently evil. They just need to be trained and controlled. When a child is just left to their own devices, and you've seen this, you probably know people who have kids who are out of control. They just throw tantrums all the time, they get everything they want, the parents have no control over them because they don't discipline them, and the kids just run buck wild. Child wasn't even the problem. The problem is that the parents didn't assert their authority. They didn't control the child. And it's the same thing with dogs. You probably know pet owners. You might be one of these pet owners who just doesn't believe in disciplining your pet. So the pet just runs around thinking they're the alpha, they're in charge, and just shits on everything, pisses on everything, chews up everything. And then you finally have to call like a dog trainer who comes to your house, or maybe take it to the dog trainer. And all the dog trainer does is assert their authority over the dog. And once the dog respects their authority, they're a completely different dog. So the problem isn't women. Women have not changed. Women are not anything different than they've always been. They've always been this way. Their female nature has not changed. What has changed is the society, the gynocentrism. We've created this society where we've let them become spoiled brats. We've let them become untamed wild dogs. And the results are entirely predictable. Just like when you see children and dogs out of control, you now see women out of control. If you're not at that point just to walk away from women entirely, at least have the common sense to remain in control. Now that's very hard, and it's getting harder in today's gynocentric society, but it is possible to maintain an adequate level of control in order to have a relationship with a woman to some degree. I am not endorsing marriage or long-term relationships. What I am endorsing is if you value sex that much that you can't just walk away, do not raw dog her, wear a condom, have a spare condom you put horseradish sauce in, put that in the trash can. If she tries to sperm jack you, she's just going to rub horseradish sauce in her vagina. Or think about getting a vasectomy. If you have to raw dog it, get a vasectomy. Never let her move in. Never cohabitate. I don't care if she's getting kicked out of her house. Whatever sob story she gives you to try to get you to let her to move in with you, don't do it. If you let her move in with you, you fall under all this common law marriage bullshit. Don't do it. Now, if you do all these things, now, I don't know about what laws are coming down the road. Feminists are always dreaming of new ways to fuck over guys and get guys' money flowing to them under whatever pretense. So you have to be very, very careful. And now with regret rape and yes means yes, it's really not worth it in my opinion. But if you must go out there, if you must keep your dick moisturized, at least be smart, at least take every precaution necessary. Maintain control. If you maintain control, women are fine. And if this society is ever replaced with a patriarchal society, where men are allowed to maintain control over women, women will be fine as a group. When they're under control, they're fine. In the meantime, since we don't live in that society, you have to be extremely careful. And the last bit of practical advice I give you is in regards to when to cut things off. And this doesn't just apply to women, although it especially applies to women, but it applies to all relationships. It applies to all things, but especially relationships. So this is going to apply to your job, this is going to apply to your friends. When do you cut off the relationship? And the answer is when it no longer provides a net benefit. Now, value is subjective, so what you value at the time may change. So a relationship may not change. You may get exactly what you've always gotten out of the relationship, and you may put in exactly what you've always put into the relationship. But simply because of the subjective nature of value, you may value what you're putting in more than you're getting out. And at that point, it's no longer providing a net benefit to you. Now when it comes to relationships with women, the man almost always is going to put in more than he gets out. She's the one in charge, especially in a gynocentric society. So the man is always going to be putting in more on an objective level than the woman. But if you really value her sex, maybe that's worth it to you. The subjective nature of value comes into play. But I suspect when you reach your 30s, when your sex drive calms down a bit, you're not going to value sex that much. You're going to objectively look at her, you're going to see how little she contributes to the relationship, and you're going to realize what a shitty deal you made. So don't sign any documents, don't get into anything you can't get out of. And when you realize that the relationship isn't providing a net benefit, it's time to go. It's time to kick her out or leave or whatever you have to do to end the relationship. Now, this doesn't just apply to women. If you have a friend that has changed or you've changed or whatever, and now he's just sapping you, he's just being a parasite to you. Maybe he borrows money from you and doesn't pay you back. Maybe he's just an annoying piece of shit. But you keep him around as a friend because maybe you've just been friends for a long time and you just don't want to embrace that change. Maybe you're simply just afraid of being lonely. Now, when a man gets older, a lot of his male friends are going to get married. They're going to ditch him for women. It's just going to happen. It's the nature of our sex drive. We value sex so much that we make really terrible decisions. But as a man, you need to just accept this. Don't hold on to your friends too tightly because they change too. They may turn on you and manipulate you just as much as a woman does. So if you have a friend that's manipulating you who isn't giving back what you're putting in, cut him loose, even though he's a guy, even though he's your friend. You have to have some kind of net benefit in whatever relationships you engage in. Now on a professional level, you can use this mental exercise to guide whether you should quit your job or whatever. So if you go to a job and you're contributing your time and energy, and you're not getting what you feel you deserve back, it's time to dust off your resume and look for another job. If you don't qualify for the job you want, it's time to start training yourself. It's time to start taking courses or college classes in order to get that job that you want. I mean, what's stopping you? If you're MGTOW, you should have the time and the money to do this. So go make your dreams happen. Don't just stay in the job you're in because you fear change and because you're attached. Embrace the change. The only constant is change. If you don't like where you are, stop standing there and move somewhere else. And if you can't move somewhere else now, come up with a plan in order to get to the point where you can move to where you want to be. But in order to do all of that, you have to be detached. You can't be too attached to your job or your relationships, whether it's men or women. If you can do that, then you can embrace the change, you can appreciate the journey, you can live in the moment and be happy in the moment. Even though you know it won't last. That's okay, because nothing lasts. Just accept and embrace it. Appreciate things for what they are, and appreciate them in the moment. Like a flower. So that concludes part 5. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section, and I'll answer those in the follow-up video next week. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey. Welcome to part 6 of the Zen of Zero Fucks Given. This may actually be the last chapter, I'm not sure. It depends on if I get any comments after this video that would necessitate a follow-up video. You may be wondering where the follow-up video is for attachment, the last video. Why am I jumping directly to the next topic? Well, a lot of the comments that I normally would respond to are basically going to be covered in this video. For example, I've had comments about whether being completely detached from everything and everyone is a sign of sociopathy, or if it leads to suicidal depression. I've even been called a hypocrite, because I claim to be detached and yet I don't dox myself. The fact that I protect my identity, and that I don't want to be doxed and unemployed, means that I don't really believe what I'm saying. But hopefully all of that becomes clear through this video. But before we talk about the subject of today's video, let's do a brief recap. You need to understand that life is intrinsically meaningless. It only has the meaning and purpose that you give it. Also, you need to have a perspective that nothing lasts. Everything is temporary. And then you need to develop a sense of detachment. Don't get too attached to anything or anyone, because things change. Just appreciate it for what it is in the moment. But then the question becomes, well then what should you live your life for? If everything is meaningless, temporary, and can only be enjoyed in the moment, then what's the point? Why not just kill yourself? And the answer is you have to have one more final piece of the puzzle. And those of you who have followed my channel for a long time, this is not going to surprise you. I've talked about this many times. The answer is self-actualization through growth and goals. So I'm not sure how much more I can cover this topic because I've talked about it so many times. In fact, one of my first videos I've ever made, and probably the one I'm very proud of, maybe even the most proud of, because I think the information is so timely. Maybe instead of just redoing that video, I'll cover some of the things I talked about in this video. And the video is called Capable of Anything. But the ultimate message of that video, when you lose everything, you can do anything. And when you fully understand what that means, you really will stop giving a shit. You will understand what it means to have zero fucks given, and there will be peace. And there will be hope. You are your only judge. So first you have to have some sort of goal, some sort of plan. So you come up with a plan of where you want to be. And it could be as simply as somewhere not here. Maybe you don't like something about your life. Well, decide now that you're going to change it. Come up with a plan to change what you don't like. To move towards a place that you're more comfortable. Come up with a plan to accomplish that, and then move forward. Now, people are going to look at you weird because you're not going with the mainstream. Who gives a shit? You know what you're doing. You know where you want to be. You know the progress you've made. You will be your only judge. You will stop giving a shit about what other people think. They'll tell you you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Don't listen to this, listen to me. And you won't care. Now, you should listen to people and consider what they have to say if they have information that you don't have. Some people are worth listening to, but only if their information helps you achieve your goals. If their information won't help you, it's not worth considering. And their judgment will not affect you at all, because they're trying to get you to go where they want you to go, not necessarily where you want to go. So by trying to judge and shame you, they're trying to get you to alter course. But you know where you're going. And so you don't need to give a shit about what they think. And as you move forward with your goals, as you better your life, as you get to a place where you're happy and content, the last step is you need to appreciate that you've accomplished what you wanted to do and allow yourself to be happy. Happiness is an emotion that you can choose to feel. Happiness is not the joy and ecstasy you may feel while doing drugs or having sex. Those are highs. And if you chase highs, you're going to destroy your life. Seek the happiness of contentment. When you arrive to the place you want to be, you will feel maybe even a sense of emptiness. Where you're wondering, is this it? Is this what I fought so hard for? Is this what I sacrificed so much for to arrive at this moment? And you'll almost expect this rush of emotion to come over you. And it may not. You'll feel proud for a moment and then it will pass. And then you may feel uneasy, like you need to accomplish more. Allow yourself to be happy. Consider your situation. Ask yourself if there's something you don't like about your situation, if you'd rather be somewhere else doing something else. If the answer is no, if there's nowhere else you'd rather be than here, if there's nothing else you'd rather do than what you're doing right now, then allow yourself to be happy. Allow yourself to be content. And when you've achieved that happiness, when you're content with your situation, you will stop giving one fucking shit about what other people think of you. Because what do they have to offer you? Now, if you're ever bored and want to change, you can always do that. The important thing is you are your only judge. You are in control of your own happiness. You are in control of your own life. This is why I value freedom so much, because without freedom, you can't do those things. You need to be free in order to pursue your passions, in order to move to the place where you're happy and content. If you're not free, you may not be able to do that. You may be restricted. And that's the greatest tragedy of all. But if you're free and you're moving forward, you can be happy and content, and that's all that matters. So that about ties everything together as far as I'm concerned. I think I've hit on everything. If you just follow what I've talked about in these videos, you'll see that people's words, their shaming tactics just don't affect you anymore. And why should they? So let me know if you have any questions in the comment section. There may be one final video in this series if I see any good questions. Otherwise, if we're all on the same page, if there's nothing else to talk about, then I consider this video series complete, and I'll combine it and upload it to YouTube shortly. So this is Turd Flinging Monkey, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.